Good morning students. Today we have a discussion on problem-based learning. So in community medicine, problem-based learning would be a clinical case scenario. As such, you need to take clinical cases during your practical final exams and you would have related viva about these cases. So I'll just tell you a few important clinical cases which you could have for your exams. So you could have a antenatal case, a postnatal case, then from the pediatric ward you could have any case of under 5, or you could have a case of diarrhea, you could have a case of pneumonia. Then from medicine ward you could have HIV, tuberculosis, or maybe dengue case, okay, or malaria, okay. So all these, and pyrexia of unknown origin. So these are few important cases which you could have for clinical case scenarios. Rheumatic heart disease. Now, your first case scenario for your discussion is rheumatic heart disease. So, I'll just read the scenario to you. A 24-year-old lady, housemaker, resident of Pravaranagar, Maharashtra, presented with shortness of breath for 6 years and intermittent palpitation for 2 years. She was apparently well 6 years back when she developed dyspnea on exertion. She was admitted and evaluated in a tertiary care hospital where she was diagnosed to have valvular heart disease. She was advised a valve surgery and 3 weekly benzathine penicillin injections. But she did not undergo surgery due to poor financial status. After discharge, she continued to have her dyspnea, that is NYHA 2 symptoms. 3 years later, she also stopped penicillin injection without consulting any physician. 2 years back, she started having intermittent palpitation and sense of irregular heartbeat, which has a gradual onset and offset. She started taking medications for the palpitation, which decreased her symptoms partially. But for the last 6 months, she is having excessive palpitation and NYHA 3 dyspnea in spite of medicines. There is history that when she was 10 years old of an episode of fever and migratory arthritis involving the knees, ankles and elbow for 2 weeks. She carries some echocardiography reports and hospital papers of that illness, which suggests that she was seen in a tertiary care hospital and was treated with steroids. She was also advised monthly injections, which she took for 4 months and stopped. On examination, the patient was tachypneic, her blood pressure was 80 by 40 mm of Hg and heart rate was 110 beats per minute and irregular. There was no pallor, icterus or pedal edema, lung fields were clear and there was no hepatomegaly. On cardiac examination, the cardiac impulse was displaced to the 6th intercostal space and 2 centimeters outside the mid-clavicular line, and it was hyperdynamic in nature. S1 was loud and variable in intensity, and S2 was narrow split with loud P2. There was a grade 3 pansystolic murmur at the apex going to the axilla. There was also a long mid-diastolic rumble with no pre-systolic accentuation. Her echocardiography revealed atrial fibrillation with fast ventricular rate. Chest X-ray showed cardiomegaly with biatrial enlargement. So the usual questions that you could get with rheumatic heart disease are: what is your provisional diagnosis? Enumerate the investigations to be done. How will you manage this case? Which level of prevention has failed? Give preventive and control measures. Give advice at individual, family and community level. Now about history taking. So you are well versed with how you need to take history and how you need to present. So in these case scenarios, your discussion would start from the beginning, how you take your usual case. So first, in any case, you take general information. In this case, we have just started. In this case scenario, I just told you about a 24-year-old lady, housemaker, resident of Pravaranagar, Maharashtra. So the few important things what you need to include in general information are name, age, sex, occupation, address, and where she is admitted, like which ward, the IP number, and sometimes, like most of the books say, that you need to take socio-economic status also under general information. Now you must be knowing the importance of taking all of them. Name, it would help in the identification of patient. Sometimes it could tell you even about the religion of the patient. And again important, you need to take religion also in general information. Now age. Age tells us that some diseases are common in certain age group. Like for example, rheumatic heart disease is common in this age group, 5 to 19, or the school age group. Then about occupation, certain diseases are common in certain occupations. Address, again important, that if you are getting too many cases from a similar kind of cases from a similar area, so you can think that there is an outbreak in that region. Okay. So ward, again you know where the patient is, IP number and socioeconomic status. Then the next important thing is chief complaints. So under chief complaints in this case, we have told that she presented with shortness of breath for 6 years and intermittent palpitation for 2 years. The important things what you need to remember in chief complaints are, it has to be in a chronological order, and it has to be in patient's own words. So for example, we have not written it as dyspnea. So here we write it as shortness of breath. Okay. So you're writing these chief complaints in the patient's own words. History of presenting illness. So what symptoms you're taking in as the chief complaint. So those symptoms need to be elaborated under history of presenting illness. So any symptom for that matter, you usually need to ask how was the onset, okay, whether it was sudden, it was gradual, then how did the disease progress, whether there were any associated factors with it. Like for example, if you're taking cough, so you're asking few other things, okay, how was the cough, whether it had sputum, okay, or it was a dry cough, then everything related to the cough, okay, what was the quantity, whether it had, whether it was blood tinged, whether it was foul smelling. So you need to ask all these things, right? And then aggravating and relieving factors. Now for example, in this case, we have history of breathlessness. So we are going to ask what were the conditions on which it aggravated, or when did it relieve, okay, and then positive and negative history, fine. So in positive and negative history, you need to know everything about that particular disease, or that symptom could be in which diseases. So depending on that, you need to rule out the other differential diagnosis, and this you can do by asking a proper positive and negative history. So coming to this case, so here history of presenting illness, what points were there in this case scenario was that she was apparently well 6 years back. Then she developed dyspnea on exertion, and she was admitted and evaluated in a tertiary care hospital where she was diagnosed with valvular heart disease. Again, a very important point here, that whatever she's been taking, like after she has developed the symptoms, where she has shown any treatment given to her, whether she has completed that treatment properly, okay, so all that needs to be taken, and that we have included in this history of presenting illness. Now clinical features. Now here usually her chief complaints were shortness of breath and intermittent palpitation. Now you need to know the other clinical features. So whatever diagnosis is on your mind, you need to ask the other symptoms also, so that you could come to a conclusion. So these symptoms, when you know they are part of rheumatic heart diseases, could be your positive and negative histories. Now according to the Jones criteria, you can classify rheumatic heart disease under different categories, that is primary episode of rheumatic fever, recurrent attack of rheumatic fever in a patient without rheumatic heart disease, or it could be recurrent attack with established heart disease, then rheumatic chorea, which is insidious in onset. Okay, that is insidious onset rheumatic carditis. Okay, so for primary episode of rheumatic fever, the criteria would be two major or one major, two minor manifestations plus evidence of preceding group A streptococcal infection. Now coming to recurrent attack of rheumatic fever in a patient without established rheumatic heart disease. Here two major or one major and two minor manifestations plus evidence of a preceding group A streptococcal infection. Then the next one, recurrent attack of rheumatic fever in a patient with established rheumatic heart disease. So in this case we have two minor manifestations plus evidence of a preceding group A streptococcal infection. Rheumatic chorea or the insidious onset rheumatic carditis. So other major manifestation or evidence of group A streptococcal infection, here it is not required. Okay, so and the other category, chronic valve lesions of RHD. Here you do not require any other criteria to be diagnosed as having rheumatic heart disease. So the other important points you need to know, what are these major minor criteria and supporting evidence of a preceding streptococcal infection within the last 45 days. Now under major manifestations, you have carditis, polyarthritis, chorea, erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodules. Under minor manifestations, clinically it is fever, polyarthralgia, lab findings, they are elevated acute phase reactants, that is ESR or leukocyte count. Then the supporting evidence to say that supporting evidence of a preceding streptococcal infection within the last 45 days, it is ECG findings, that is a prolonged PR interval, elevated or rising anti-streptolysin O or other streptococcal antibody, or a positive throat culture or rapid antigen test for group A streptococci or recent scarlet fever. Personal history. So under personal history, you ask for their diet, appetite, bowel habits, bladder habits and habits. Then past medical and surgical history. So in this case, she is told that when she was 10 years old, she had an episode of fever, migratory arthritis with knees, ankles and elbows for 2 weeks. She carries her ECG reports and hospital papers of that illness, which suggests that she was seen in a tertiary care hospital and she was treated with steroids, and she was also advised her monthly injections, okay, which she took just for 4 months and she stopped. Family history. So we need to ask, like any other case, we need to ask about history of diabetes, hypertension, tuberculosis, asthma, drug allergies and heart diseases which are in the family. Then another most important thing that when you are taking a case in community medicine, you need to write about this family history in detail. Like you need to ask the family size. So family size is the number of family members, family type, whether it is a nuclear family, joint family or the 3-generation family. Okay, so all these family types, size, all this is told to you in the other classes. Then the family structure. Here you need to ask about all the family members, their name, what is their relation with the head of the family, their age, sex, education, occupation, income, and then if it's a child below 5 years, then immunization. Okay. So once you get the income, depending on the area where they live in, okay, if it's an urban area or a rural area. So you're going to calculate the socio-economic status, the total income you get, whatever all the family members are earning, and then you can classify. Fine. So if it's a rural area, you would usually use the BG Prasads. And then if it's an urban area, you would go for the modified Kuppuswamy classification. Okay. So once you get the socio-economic status, why is it important in this case is poverty has a relation with rheumatic heart disease. The prevalence is more in if there is poverty. Now coming to the environmental history. In environmental history, you need to ask about different things, like mainly you can ask uh, about the macro environment and micro environment. Now, what is macro environment? It is the area where they are living in, okay? And then micro environment is about the house itself. So we need to ask about housing, about the water, the solid waste management, liquid waste management, whether there is fly breeding and mosquito breeding in and around the house. Okay. Now under housing, you're going to ask everything about the house. Like you must be knowing by now what is a kacha house, what is a pakka house, semi-kacha, semi-pakka. So pakka houses, if the floor, okay, walls and the roof, they are made up of impervious material like cement, stone, tiles, so all these. So that is a pakka house. If it's not these, it's a pervious material like mud for floor and all that, then it would be kacha. So two things which are maybe impervious, then it would be a semi pakka, if not semi kacha. So all these are different types of houses. Again, you understand under which conditions the person is living and whether that could lead to the disease what he is having. Okay. So about housing, then you need to ask the floors, the total area of the house. Okay, the number of rooms, the area of each room, windows, doors, the size of these windows and doors. Why is this important? We get an idea about the ventilation in that house or cross ventilation. That's why we need to ask for all these things. Then we need to ask for the kitchen, whether it's separate, and what is the fuel for cooking, where is the whether they have a separate place or to keep the stove. Okay, so all these things, and how many times they cook, how do they store their raw food and cooked food. So you need to ask about all this. Then the next important point is about water. So in water, what you're going to ask, whether where is the water source, how is the area around the water source, and what water they are collecting, how do they store, whether they use dipping method to collect water. So again, all this is very important in a case of gastroenteritis. So depending on the different case, and here we get an idea about the poverty status, which is related to the rheumatic heart disease. Okay. So this you need to ask. And another important point for vector-borne diseases is the water that they are storing. Okay, whether in a week, whether they are observing a dry day, that is discarding all the water, making it dry. Okay, or how do they keep the water? Is it covered? So all these things are important. It is important. Otherwise, it would lead to a place where the mosquitoes can breed. Okay, they can lay their eggs. So that's why you need to ask this. Then solid waste management, how do they collect their waste, whether they have a dustbin, is it covered, do they throw it daily. So you need to ask this. Then liquid waste is usually, here we are bothered about the sullage. Sullage is what? The kitchen and bathroom waste which doesn't has the night soil. So how is that managed? Then fly breeding and mosquito breeding, whether it's present in and around the house. Now the next important thing is the diet history. Now in diet history, what we usually follow is the 24-hour recall method. So you are going to take, you're asking for everything what she has had in that one day. Okay, from morning to up to she sleeps, her breakfast, all the various dishes, and calculate the calories. So you have all these in PARC. Okay, calories are given for that specific menu. Okay, so calculate the calories and the proteins, how much she's eating. And for her age and sex, you can calculate how much is actually required. Then you can see whether she's taking excess or she's taking less and comment accordingly. Okay. Again, diet history very important in a case, in an antenatal case, in a PNC case, diabetes. So, because diet is important in these cases. Now the next important thing is general physical examination. The first thing what you would ask in general physical examination is orientation of the patient. Then these basic things: pulse, blood pressure, respiratory rate has to be taken. In a female patient, we see spine, breast and thyroid also. Okay. Then we check for pallor, edema, clubbing, icterus and lymphadenopathy. So there is a mnemonic here: pencil, P for pallor, E for edema, N for nails, and here you see clubbing. Okay. And then icterus, cyanosis and lymphadenopathy. Okay. On examination, in this case we have told you that on examination the patient was tachypnic, her blood pressure was 80 by 40 mm of Hg and her heart rate was 110 beats per minute and irregularly irregular. There was no pallor, icterus or pedal edema. Systemic examination. So important systems have to be examined, like the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system and the central nervous system, and per abdominal examination. So you need to remember that whichever system means depending on the case, you need to see that system in detail. Like if it's a cardiovascular case, like in this case, you need to speak about cardiovascular system under these 4 headings. Inspection, so everything what you're going to see. Then palpation, okay, what you're going to palpate and observe, okay. And then the auscultation and percussion, okay. So under all these headings you need to examine the case in detail. Some cases may have symptoms symptoms of 2 systems. So in that case both the systems need to be examined in depth. Like you need to examine the case, the cardiovascular system also and the respiratory system also, and then the other systems you could just comment whether it is normal. Okay, so you need to understand which is the system and you need to tell about it completely. So in this case we just told that the lung fields were clear, there was no hepatomegaly. On cardiac examination, the cardiac impulse was displaced to the 6th intercostal space and 2 centimeters outside the midclavicular line, and it was hyperdynamic in nature. Okay, and S1 was loud and variable in intensity. S2 was narrow, split with loud P2, and there was a grade 3 pansystolic murmur at the apex going to axilla. There was also a long mid-diastolic rumble with no pre-systolic accentuation. Management. Now in management you need to see all the investigations which were done and what you need to do depending on the history what she is giving, and then the treatment which was given. And in this case we have told that her ECG was done which revealed atrial fibrillation with fast ventricular rate. Chest X-ray was done which showed cardiomegaly with biatrial enlargement. Then you need to, based on all these things, you need to tell about the provisional diagnosis. Rheumatic heart disease, okay, in this case with history of rheumatic fever. She was on treatment but she has not taken it completely. Now which level of prevention has failed? Now about levels of prevention, there are different levels of prevention: primordial, primary, secondary and tertiary. So primordial is what? Before the risk factors could even come into that population, okay. And then primary is, it is before, okay, before the disease. And usually in primary prevention it is the health promotion and specific protection. Examples here being taking iron tablets for anemia, okay. So in this case what has happened, she has not done, means there was no primary prevention here. So what is primary prevention, we will see in the next slides, okay. Then secondary prevention is early diagnosis and treatment. So I feel though she was diagnosed but she didn't get her treatment properly, she didn't continue the treatment well, okay. Then tertiary prevention, it's afterwards, okay. So as I told you, secondary is in the early stages, so it is in the more advanced stages. So in this case what I feel is primary and secondary level of prevention have failed. Now preventive measures. So in rheumatic heart disease you could classify it into primary prevention, secondary prevention, other non-medical measures and evaluation. Okay. So under primary prevention, it is usually population based, that is everybody with sore throat and all, just check and then treat them with benzathine benzyl penicillin so that they don't have a rheumatic heart disease. So it's very difficult. For one case you need to screen so many cases. Okay, to prevent one rheumatic heart disease you need to uh, you need to check many people. So it's not feasible. So you can have a high risk approach. Usually the school children, there the anybody with sore throat could be swabbed, cultured and then treated with a single intramuscular injection of benzathine benzyl penicillin. The dose is 1.2 million in adults and 6 lakhs in children. Okay. So if you need to give orally, penicillin B is given for 10 days. Okay. And if they are allergic to penicillin, then you can go for erythromycin. Now secondary prevention. Uh, if they have had rheumatic fever, then IM injections of benzathine benzyl penicillin, again the same dose what I told you, 1.2 million in adults and 6 lakhs in children, is given every 3 weeks. Okay, and this is given for every 5. So for how many years you need to give them is for 5 years or up to they have attained 18 years of age. So whichever is later. Okay, so you need to give for that duration. Now the second group, that is the carditis, but a mild one. Okay, so here they have mitral valve regurgitation or healed carditis. So in this case what is done, the treatment is for it is given for 10 years or up to 25 years of age, whichever is later. Okay. Then about the severe valvular disease or the post valve surgery. So in such cases, in case of severe diseases, you need to give a lifelong treatment. Okay. Now moving on to few other things like the non-medical measures. Now the non-medical measures are the environmental factors, the social factors, okay, all these things. So very important is you need to reduce or break this poverty, disease, poverty chain. Okay. So once this is done, so this is a very important preventive measure that could be taken. And next is evaluation. Uh, Surveys could be done in these school children every 5 years. So the sample size which could be taken is around 20,000, okay, 20,000 to 30,000. Again depends on that prevalence in that area. So on all these factors, continuous evaluation could be done. Now about the advice, okay. So what advice would we give to this patient? Fine. So you have seen the case, what we have seen, that she was diagnosed with rheumatic fever and she had to continue her penicillin injections and she had not taken it. Okay. So very important, at individual level the advice has to be that she has to take her treatment continuously. Okay, whatever advice is being given, they need to take that treatment. Okay, and then about the other things are the poverty, all that chain needs to be worked on. Okay, then coming to the family level. So what advice are we going to give to the family members is the first important thing. So we know that all these factors, they have an important role to play, which I'm telling again and again. In rheumatic heart disease, poverty is important. So at family level and the patient's adherence to the treatment. So family members could be told about the disease and that how she needs to uh, take care and continue with the treatment. Okay. So another important thing is about rheumatic heart disease, that we discussed rheumatic heart disease under a communicable disease and a non-communicable disease. Okay. So rheumatic heart disease is a non-communicable disease, but the cause, okay, what we say the etiology is the streptococci beta hemolyticus. So this is a communicable one. Okay, it's a infection. So you need to know about the etiopathogenesis of the disease, so you could advise accordingly. Okay, and family members also could be told about the disease. Okay, and how they need to get for a sore throat. The investigations need to be done, and if needed, the treatment, and which has to be taken continuously. Now about community. So in community, again rheumatic heart disease, it's the important factors here being that overall the health services, okay, all those things has a very important impact on rheumatic heart disease. So about the incidence and prevalence, if there are good number of facilities, so early diagnosis could be done of rheumatic fever, and then the prophylaxis could be given, so this could prevent the disease. Thank you.